Welcome to the Retail Initiative podcast. I have a really special episode for you today that I'm so excited to bring you into. So a few months ago, I hosted an event called the Manifest Workshop with my friend Tara Austin. She owns Ruthie Grace Boutique. We've done this event every year for the last few years, and every year it continues to grow. And honestly, the feedback we get on it is incredible. Now, this episode, my friend Ashley Alderson from the Boutique Hub, which I'm a huge fan of, I've been part of for several years, she joined us and she did a keynote on the second day. And then at the end, I didn't tell her about this, but I got on stage and I wanted to talk about community over competition, which if you're familiar with the Boutique Hub, you've heard that a ton. If you're not, it's the idea of we don't have to all just act in competition with each other, but we can really see it as a retail industry as when one ship rises, so does the other. A rising tide lifts all ships. But then, so we may say we believe in that, but then another store in town starts carrying our stuff or starts kind of copying our pieces, and it gets really hard when the rubber meets the road. And so I walked on stage at the end of her talk and I was like, hey, let's have a seat. I want to talk about community over competition. And that's what you're about to hear. So I'm going to take you inside the event, something that people paid a decent amount of money to attend. And this is as a free gift to you. I really think you're going to get a lot of encouragement from this episode. So let's dive right into the interview. First off, let's address the elephant in the room.
Ooh.
You're here, part of which as an embodiment of community over competition. Mm-hmm. It's not lost in us. You and I both have a mastermind.
Yeah.
We both have retail courses that serve the retail community. And someone could choose between Retail Bootcamp and the Manifest Intensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they do.
And they do.
Yeah.
You do. Some of you, I'm sure, maybe made that decision.
Yeah.
And so we're here, part of which to embody that, because I wholeheartedly believe in what the Boutique Hub's doing. And I almost said but if you saw a post I made this week, I'm trying to get but just out of my vocabulary, unless I'm really trying to make a point. But I want to first show, this is an embodiment of, I believe, what did I say?
You said it.
I have not dropped one F-bomb. I bet Carly did. Carly, did you? Yeah, she did. Yeah, good.
Of course.
So if I do, it's not the first time that you hear it. But here's the thing that I know to be true.
Yeah.
Is that when you go to Boutique Hub events and you learn and you grow, have any of you ever learned and grown and been like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to go anywhere else?
Oh, no.
Read one business book and you're like, yeah, I'm good. My hope is that it doesn't even stop with Boutique Hub. It doesn't stop with Manifest. That you go to the next thing. Carly's talking about doing her stuff, and I hope you go to her stuff. Our hope is that, and I believe the same to be true of the boutique community.
So the idea that I was talking about today, process over product. So if I was only focused on the product, right, I'll say the sales, then community over competition would be hard because I'd be like, well, someone's choosing to spend your money with you and not me, right? And that's with having a boutique across the street. You would see the same thing. If I'm only looking at the product, then, man, the competition's out to get me. But if I'm more in love with the process, which we both are, and that is that every single person in this room goes home and you're like, God damn it, I can do this. And I'm going to be a dang good mom or a dang good wife or a dang good sister on top of it. That's the process for me that I want. And when you guys come here, you're getting that. And when you come to the hub, you're going to get it. And when you walk down the wine aisle at Walmart, can we just talk about that? Why are there so many different types of wine? Because everyone likes something a little bit different. So that's good for everyone because we're just going to create more wine drinkers. So we're just making more great boutique owners. That's the purpose.
It is. But I want to get vulnerable and let's have a real conversation, because how many of you are like, yes, I believe in community over competition, but.
There's this one person.
And there's the but. Yeah. Anyone? Let's be honest. I know I have.
I have.
You and I have had some hard conversations.
Yeah.
How do you see that where does that coexist? Because there is the reality of that boutique owner who is knocking all your posts, literally stealing your graphics, all those pieces. How do you see like, how do you keep that community over competition mindset when there is that person, there is that boutique owner that's just stealing all your shit, and you're like, for real, like, I want your good, but not that way.
Yeah. Well, two things. One, I spent all my money with Crystal Rose to talk through all of those really painful moments. Shout out. But second, like, I'm all about Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last. You know? Like, you guys, how many times have you seen something the hub's done and someone else is knocked off? Like, we face this all the time too, and I know you guys do. But they can copy your stuff, they can copy your brands, they can copy your posts. They can't copy you. They can't copy your stories. They can't copy when you get vulnerable on Facebook Live and, you know, bend over and knock over 2 lights and your whale tail pops out. Like, they can't copy that stuff. So you just have to, like, live into it and be so happy with who you are and know, like you know, that you are here for a purpose. Then some of that stuff can fade out. It doesn't mean that it doesn't ever come back and the chirps come back, because they do for all of us.
So what does that look like for you? Because there are a good handful of hub copiers. Like, I would like to think that Tara and I, we just stay in our lane. We are like, we love this world. I work in it all the time. Tara's in it. And so we want to serve in that world. We're not really looking to the hub to, like, what should we do? But there's some that I'm like, dear God, like, you were just trying to knock off the hub. How are you walking through that? Like, how do you handle those pieces? And maybe even 2 versions of this, because I want the vulnerable side. When you're not handling it well, what does that look like? And then when you are at your best, what does that look like?
Oh, God. Okay, well, vulnerable side, there's probably been posts over the years that some of you have seen. Like, Kimmy, you've been in the hub for a long time. There's probably been posts that I've made over the years that were very defensive and not the best version of myself, because it pisses me off. It pisses all of us off when that happens, right? And so I'm going to go into defend mode. And there's people that hate my guts out there. Fine, okay. You know, I don't have control over that. So there's moments I've handled it like crap, but I think the moments that are good, and I would say this is an example of us, is we just communicate about it. So I've had people in the past where I've reached out and I've been like, yo, let's collaborate. Like, you can even be in the hub, until, like, we communicate about what does that mean, and then they cross the line and I'm like, okay, this isn't good anymore. Like, you go do your own thing, I'll do mine. But I think the difference here is, like, we all talk about it. We all talk about, like, how can we make it better for people? So I think communication is a big key.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to even share some of the story, I'd love to hear go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm just, like, kind of on this same subject, coming from someone who works with so many boutiques and also so many vendors. What are your thoughts on identity thing? Because, you know, it all kind of is weaved into this. Like, there's, like, the confidentiality, like, piece of it. Is it worth it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That's such a good, do you want to answer that now?
Do you mind, can we circle back to that here in a second, just to keep the same flow of conversation? But I definitely want to. I think that's a conversation that's worth having. But I just, like, even share some of the behind the scenes. We're clear communication. So a few years ago, like Tara shared, I was, like, in the point of sale world. We had launched e-commerce, but being in the point of sale, like, I was seeing behind the scenes so much. And I even started to shift the way we sold that. I've always been one to, like, that's how the industry does it. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it 9 days. So I sold POS systems with, like, I don't even care what system this is. I'm going to teach you how to operate a retail business, and then just that system's the means to an end. And then I charged, like, 3 times what any of my competition did, because I was able to do it that way. But I hated that world, and I was a good teacher, and I enjoyed that stuff, and I wanted to get into it. And actually, from someone that I discovered through Ashley, a guy named Russell Brunson, who has had a massive impact on my life, I, like, saw this pathway there, and I created this thing called Retail Initiative, which now is just the name of my podcast, but I was like, this can be a community, and this can be this, and this can be this, and we launch it, and then Beth, her COO, reaches out and like, hey, can we have a Zoom? And I'm like thinking it's just going to be me and Beth, and then Ashley shows up, and I'm like, I said it. And like, first off, it hit. And I don't know how much of, like, you're part of this that you want to share, but I at least want to share the difference in how I think this looked. because we are friends. Like
Yeah. Girls' night.
outside of business, friends. We give each other crap on text about politics and all this stuff. Like we're actual friends. And so we have this conversation. And at first I would say like, there wasn't this like perfect benefit of the doubt. It was like, what the hell are you doing? But then like she gave me a chance to reflect on it. And I was like, you know what? Like I wasn't intentionally trying to steal from you. This was a different thing than this is way before Manifest. And I realized that like I had just been in the hub so long and so familiar with it that like there was just vocabulary. There were things that I didn't even realize were from the hub that I was like implementing this new thing.
Yeah.
But then when I reflected on it, you know what I did? I owned it. And I sent her an email and I was like, hey, I'm sorry. Like this was never intentional. Like I didn't this, but here's some things I want to do to shift it. When that like hit the road, there was an open conversation.
Yeah.
And then giving the other person the opportunity to own their crap. And if they don't, you can't control that. And then you have to get back into your lane. But I want to like showcase, these are the things that happen like from the people preaching it. It still exists in our world as well, and what that's looked like. Luckily, like the conversations have looked very, very different with Manifest, as it's kind of been way more in our lane. But no, like, it doesn't have to be so hard. And yes, you're going to have that conversation and someone's going to be like, yeah, I hear you. I just don't care. And that may come. And you got to stay in your lane when that day comes. And I know that it's a challenge and it's easier said than done. But what's the other alternative? Give them complete control of your mindset and let them live in there rent-free. And you aren't operating your best because you're concerned of what they're going to copy. They're never going to have your energy, just like you said.
No. And the energy that it takes. I think that's been a big lesson for me, like the energy that you will spend worrying about someone else. You could take all that energy and be using it to build your own thing and double down on what you're already really good at. But we're all humans, and so I think it's natural to go to what feels negative and what bumps up. And you know, just in the hub, I've seen so many good examples of community over competition, like truly amazing examples that I'm so proud of. And some of you, I know you've like done your part to like reach out to that store across the street or someone who's, you know, copying you, whatever. And some end up like this, like with Josh and I, and we were like, okay, we're good. Like we talked it out, we're good now. And some don't. So it's okay just to write that moment off and go, okay, like I don't have energy for that. And if you need to block them, if you need to step away, like there's no shame in that either. Just to protect your space and to protect your energy. Your energy is the most valuable asset that you have. So whatever you have to do just to keep it going in the right direction.
One thing that was incredible last year, I want to get to everyone and come back to that. One thing that was incredible last year, there was a group of women, Samantha, that...
This is dinner conversation last night.
She didn't correct me. It was a conversation over dinner. Anyway, a group of women that met last year at the Boutique Summit, and then they did a group giveaway together with like trying to get each other to follow each other. And were any of you, is anyone here a part of that?
It was like me, Aaron Stone, Starboard Solar, Southern Roots,
Yeah.
those two sections, and one more. We're like six.
So 6 boutiques got together and did a giveaway, and then gaining each other's followers and using their audiences to benefit each other. It was such a cool thing to see from what happened here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, and so questions.
Awesome.
First, let's go to is this on subject to what we're talking about right now? Okay.
So I was at the summit in 2019, and the woman who owns Red Dress Boutique,
Yeah, Diana.
spoke, and I remember her talking about how she kind of lost her way
Yeah.
and started maintaining poor business practices, and it wasn't until she got like a cease and desist letter from a competing boutique that she was sort of pirating their ideas, that she realized, I need to stop. I need to like reevaluate and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going through that, and I've had the conversations, and I've really tried, and it's just in my 44,000 community.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. It robs your energy. It's distracting. It's disruptive. And
Yeah.
I have said to my husband, this woman did a cease and desist, and it stopped. And he goes, what are you thinking is the recourse? Where can you go with this? I'm like, I just want the bullying and the nonstop like thorn in my side to stop. And and I don't know what my options are. Because they're not as beautiful of a working relationship as this.
Yeah, and I mean, every situation is different. I'd love to hear more about that, but a cease and desist is an option. A straightforward email with an attorney even before you get to the C&D is an option. Blocking them is an option. But this is the hard part, like where you have to figure out where the teeter-totter is. The thing that I hear most often in these situations is the unintended consequence of going through the battle is what happens to your customers. Because your customers know if you guys are fighting. And so you can either choose to like engage, because if you send the C&D, then that person says, you know what, she sent me a C&D and she did it. So sometimes if you just choose to not engage and choose to like level up, your customers are going to feel your energy. They're going to feel that. They're going to want to stay with you. But if this person's still like just like going on with it, they're going to feel that energy from them and they don't want any part of it. Like your customers just always know.
We've been on a high road for a real long time. So that's where it's just like at
Yeah.
one point you want
Sometimes you just want a gut punch, I know. But the high road's always worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay.
I just wanted to say, personally, I appreciate this conversation so much because this is where I've matured a lot as a woman who operates a business the last few years. Way different than when I first started, and I was like, what am I doing? And so I look back sometimes and I'm like, I wonder what, that thing years ago or whatever, what are people thinking or saying? Like, I'm worried about it. And
Yeah.
I look up to you guys in the industry, so for you to share that happens to you too. You wonder if you misstep and matured as a person and relationships. Like, I really appreciate y'all talking about that and everything back because it almost makes me go, oh, it's not just me,
Yeah.
I really like this whole
Oh,
Good.
thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome.
It's been amazing to watch you grow too, and the battles that you've gone through, or we've walked through a few of them together. Yeah, they're all over.
Yeah.
The cool part is like you can ask yourself at the end of the day, like, so when you worry about that, what is so-and-so, what do they think? Because I battle that too. I still have my own demons. What do people think about, 2019 Ashley versus, 2024 Ashley? But this is what I do. I ask myself like, why or so what 5 times. So when I think about, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? Why does that bother me? And so what? And so what? And so what? And pretty soon you can distill down to like, what's the real issue that I'm worried about? And turns out 9 times out of 10, it's teeny tiny. But in our mind, we've built it up to be this really big thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Let's get into the private labeling because we have a couple minutes before our next talk. So, do you want to say your question again, and then we can?
just your thoughts. I would love your thoughts on it all. Is it worth the investment? Is it
Yeah.
not? Like just from a fear of competition / just having so many relationships with vendors and boutiques. I'd love to know your thoughts on it.
So I would love to hear your thoughts too. I have maybe an unpopular opinion because I see this 2 ways. So I used to be of the mindset where I thought you should do it. Like, why would you give your brand information out to even your customers? But then live selling happened. And then everyone going, these are Judy Blues and these are, and I don't know if any of you remember, I made a big post in the hub because I was curious what people thought, and it turned into a firestorm, and everyone was like, with their opinions. But what was really cool, what came out of that is I was worried about all these people live selling and telling everyone the brands. And then all of a sudden we had all these rides and brand new boutique owners and all these things took off, which I thought was people talking about brands. But then someone in those comments and just through messages after, they were like, you know what? Actually, it's the opposite. When our customers know who the vendor is, they begin to have an affinity with the vendor. They trust. They will shop more often online with me because they know how the vendor fits. And so it's increased my AOV. It's increased my sales, all these things. And I thought, wow, I had never thought about it like that. So I really think it has to be personal preference. I think there's a place for private label if that's really your brand and like your aesthetic, but I don't think it's for everyone, and I don't think it's always worth the investment. I think there's times where your customer needs to know what the brand is, and I guess if your competition finds out, there's how many different vendors out there. There's so many amazing ones that if you had to find a new one, you probably could pretty quickly.
Despite me being very opinionated on everything, I'm general, especially in women's, I'm not. Men's, I very much actually, I think that because men tend to be brand centric, and when they have an affinity to like a men's store, they are more likely to want the brand of that store. I think in men's, it's a different world. In women's, I don't think that that same thing is there. And so, can it work? Absolutely. Is it a needle mover? I don't think so. Now, if it's like your design and you're speaking into that, like Tara did some really cool dresses with a vendor, and it was to a degree. Was it custom labeled, Ruthie Grace? The dresses that you did that were your custom prints. My wife owns it. But it wasn't private labeled. It was just you collabed with the vendor for that print. Okay. I was like, I swore my wife has that dress. So anyway, can we give it up for Ashley? Thank you. Again, I'm so grateful for them, their community, what they do, and I believe in it. And so, Ashley, thanks for joining us.